Saturn frequency. So as I change these glasses from my Western style I would call California glasses. Cali. We're also represented as, we want to get to different selves, right? Frequency, we're talking about frequency today, people. If you know anything about frequency, remember the show Superman? He was using his memory crystals to obtain from inner earth of the people of inner earth were teaching him things. Reminds me of Lemuria and all the things, but the frequency is what you're after. These right here, these geodes actually travel at Saturn frequency, some would say, because some would say these were made out of petrified pieces of from the giants that used to roam the earth. So they travel at Saturn frequency. As I change the glasses, you could say these can go on here because they both travel maybe at the same frequency. I'm putting on the higher self, which is see-through, such as memory crystals of telepathy, telepathic powers. We used to actually have, and when you die, you develop telepathy. I've died twice, and I remember I could speak with my mind when I died, telepathically, non-verbally, when you die. So this is the higher self, took off the old, the new. So, out with the old, out with the new, my angelic telepathy frequency of the higher self, lower, from the lower to the higher. Wow. And so, also I want to explain something. A lot of people don't realize this is a learning opportunity as well. I'm trying to teach something here. These alchemical trees you see in alchemy, they're not there for no reason. I've tried to explain this to different people, believers in their faith, the Catholics, the Buddhists, the Seventh Day, yes, Christians. They don't get that this tree represents life. It's called the tree of life for a reason. It's kind of like reading in the book of Baruch. It's talking about the Satano, this fallen angel. And this is what I took from it, encoded its frequency in the fig leaves, such as the story of Adam and Eve. And imprinted, it's encoded because I had a download when I had received this. It imprinted Saturn frequency through the fig leaves and through the vine, which is also the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This can also be represented as the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Saturn frequency. But we're trying to get to the higher self, right? So Satanas was the fallen angel. And so this is also creating frequencies. And go around counterclockwise as well. Something new. You learn something new every day. And so, something else you learn when you die. I remember this. You're born into water. Baptism is a form of going back into the water, the inside out form of the man. So represented from the inside, it's happening on the out. Dying twice, always seeing water, the sound of water, tasting, hearing, seeing water. Something about water is special within this cosmic universe we live in. I don't know what it is, but something is special about water. And as the scientific experiment went with this Japanese or Asian doctor or the scientist, you've probably heard they conducted an experiment back in the early 2000s, I believe it was. I think it was 2004 or something, where they did an experiment on water, where how you would treat and talk to water, such as someone was telling me about. They put water roughly in this ice tray, and they did it roughly. They didn't do it with care, and it came out with rough crystals. Thus, if they treated water with kindness and care, and they actually took their time and love and care into it, it produced out wonderful, beautiful crystals. And so something about, I don't know what it is, maybe someone can put it in the comments. What is it about water that makes it so cosmically, or so special within this cosmic duality we live in, this cosmic universe? It's something about it. And see, most of the water now has been tainted and tampered with. What did water used to look like before things were, before we had cities and everything? What was it like before? It's just an odd way of looking at it, but I tend to think about those things. I'm like, I wonder what water used to be like. And if we're born into it, which most of the liquid when we're born is water. I didn't think it was. I used to think 90% of it was not, or I used to think 10% of it was, and 90% was some other liquid, but no, it's it's mainly water. And you think of it in religious beliefs, why do they get baptized in water, come back up? And then when you die, a lot of people, I've told this and they don't believe me, but when you die, you go back through water. And there was even another movie I remember in the mid-2000s with Cameron Diaz and someone else where they were dying. I think it was called The Box, where you open the box, somebody dies, and then you get a bunch of money, and you get to live your dream life. Well, they died, and it had that big orb of water, and she fell down on the bed, she was in water, and it goes back to the symbology, because even in these Hollywood films, the symbology is about the water. What is it about water that's so special to this divine creation we are in? It's just kind of, if you start to really think about it and dig deep, it's alchemy. It's like an alchemical symbolism as well. Water too, as well. Even like the tree I was presenting, and it's not just alchemy like it's a religion science, like you think of like, oh, making hybrids or making things that maybe you're mixing genes or splicing genes together. I'm not even talking about that. Yes, that is a part of alchemy as well, but there's different aspects. Things can be used for good or bad, right? I'm talking about the nature of this divine causality we are living in, this duality, that water is natural. And I didn't want to get on the whole subject about water or anything because we're really talking about raising frequencies, but what if something about water in itself goes into raising a frequency as well? Like, if you ever think about that like that, like, it's see-through, it's clear. Real life water that is clean and clear, there's nothing corrupt about it. So it's like, what is it about water that's so special to this divine causality? There's something about it that finite humans, because our thinkings and beliefs and everything are finite. Granted, they're so limited. And maybe something in this universe we're living in is trying to repress us and limit our ways of thinking, but it just makes you wonder, there has to be something to it. Like, there has to be something. Even in Hollywood, they do this symbolism. There's something obviously everyday people society don't think about. We really don't, because we just drink water just for drinking and we don't think about anything else of it. And so there has to be something to water that is so special that our finite ways of thinking don't comprehend and understand. And so, speaking on that, raising our frequency, we can apply water to that, right? Such as Saturn frequency would be like dirty water, the lowest form of self, which is what most people travel on and live on each and every day. You could think of narcissism as Saturn frequency because you're living with the same entities such as Archons, Viril, these spiritual, there's physical and spiritual parasites. We already have parasites living in our abdominal areas, and spiritual parasites, like almost like I had a download and I was seeing parasites living in people's brains. I could pass that by, but I think there's nothing by accident that happens in this universe. It's just my belief. And so I tend to think about these things, that Saturn frequency has to do everything to do with the Archons, real, spiritual, and physical parasites. And you think of things like the Thule Society with Hitler and everything. They were operating off of real and Saturn as well. And Saturn, I don't know if anyone's ever looked it up, but if you listen to the frequency and the noise of Saturn, along with its frequency, to me, for some reason, I don't know what it was. Maybe, I know it wasn't me just hearing things, but it sounded like people screaming, or the sounds of scream of terror. I don't know what that has to do with, but it just gave me a sick feeling in my stomach, like something was off about it. I don't know if everyone's ever heard it or has felt like that before, but what is it about Saturn frequency that's not good? Because obviously, yeah, we can go ahead and apply and say it's not good because it's the lower self. It could be almost like you same thing, someone caught up in an addiction. The lowest form of self, you're addicted means you become the strong-minded individual to this weak-minded individual. You rely on the substance. Most of the time it's physical, but there's a spiritual aspect to it as well, I do believe. This is just my only personal beliefs, because everything transpires and starts in a spiritual form or fashion, always manifests itself into a physical self form or fashion, because everything's always going to manifest some way, somehow, like even thoughts. Everything's intentional, right? So before we can physically do something, we have to do it in our mind, mental psyches, which is also a spiritual thing. Every culture, all over history, throughout all of life's history, since Earth has been here, has known stuff like that. That things always start in the psyche and then they manifest, regardless if you're talking about the pineal gland. It's always started here, and this is how thoughts and everything, we're sold mindsets, right? And it's always going to sell you to it here before you take action on it. What's always going to manifest on the physical, whether it be good or bad. And so water, Saturn frequency, real Archons. What are your thoughts on some of this? I'd like to hear some of them in the comments. Do you have experience with some of the stuff? You've seen things? Do you know anything about this? Like what the heck I'm talking about? You just think I'm some crazy whack nut job that's just talking about this, like different frequencies. And even the thing with the Superman thing as well. That, how is it that it's getting more popularized now? I've noticed on videos where they're talking about things of inner earth. And see, I didn't know anything about this in the early 2000s when I was growing up. I've never heard of it. If you did hear about it, you always saw it in a cartoon or whatever, or a movie. And they were talking about something similar to frequencies, raising up the frequencies. And then every time you went on this lower spiritual plane level, you saw these weird, evil, bad entities and stuff. And it's like, and what it was talking about, I didn't notice, but even in the old Superman cartoons, they were talking about, where did his memory crystals come from? Where did he get his knowledge? Well, he was taught his knowledge by the people of inner earth, the Kryptonians, and they were associated with people of inner earth. But what are they talking about now? And why is it getting more glamorized now to talk about, and especially on these videos, about Tartaria, Lemuria, Hyperborea, all these different names? Are they this? I sometimes believe for some reason that it's the same place. It's just these different cultures gave it different names, such as Tartaria, Hyperborea, Lemuria, Mu, and there's some other names for it as well. They also talk about Antarctica, how it goes back to the same place with the people of inner earth, so on and so forth. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. And you also talk about the memory crystals. They've also found 5D memory crystals, whatever, that you can hold humans' genome for over 1 billion years. Regardless if that's true or not, I don't know. It's not a yes or no for me. Of course, we all have our doubts and everything, where we have our own beliefs, but it just makes you think. There's always been symbolism for a reason since the beginning. And anyway, going back to what I was saying, from raising the frequencies, does this symbolism put out a way where these people, these things of the whole inner earth thing know something, and Hollywood knows something about raising the frequencies, about the water, I was talking about you about the tree of life, and even in Lord of the Rings, if you remember, it was like the good side because at the end it was like the whole Armageddon where they were battling the good and evil. The guy, I can't remember his name, he had the long hair with the sword, was wearing a necklace, and what did it have on the necklace? It had a tree of life on it. And so it's like, there's something to all of this that people don't pick on or pick up on, or that maybe they do, but they really don't care about much about it. But it's just like, I think it's just an interesting topic to talk about, where the frequencies that we raise, like, you think that it was the whole symbolism in Lord of the Rings, where it was like, you have the two sides, but the two sides are really represented by, I say fire and ice a lot, like fire and ice, and then one's bad, one's good. Do they transmute? But it's like, at the same time, are they represented by two different frequencies? The bad side is the Saturn, which is in the movie, it was the orcs were the bad because they were created with black goo in reality. They were cloned through the mud, but in reality, they were made by black goo. They were hybrid. Either some of them were, I believe, were clones, but they were made out of really black goo. It's just symbolism for black goo. They just put it as. See, in these movies, they only give you half truths. They don't give you the whole truth. Tell you right now, I do believe it was black goo, how those things were created. And it was an army of orcs, but it was a hybrid kingdom going to battle with a kingdom of light, which are represented by the tree of life, which I've never heard this, but something tells me, I have a hunch that maybe that has to do with, what is that, the fruits of the Spirit, as they talk about in biblical texts such as the Gnostic texts and the Bible and everything. I think I've even heard it talking about in the other texts as well. The tree of life maybe has some connection with the fruits of the Spirit or something, but I don't know. Characteristics, tree of life, whatever, but raising the frequencies. You think about it, the bad side is the Saturn, and then the good side is like the angelic, which also goes into telepathy, and what I was talking about dying, how, and you hear other stories about this in Gaia TV and everything about other people dying, and say, remember, it's telepathy. You speak and do everything with your mind. You don't talk verbally anymore. And even encounter people saying they've had angels, they've encountered them, talked to them, and it's all done by mind. It just makes you wonder, right? I mean, if you're interested in this type of stuff or curious in the least little bit about this, if you've ever had your own experiences or known anyone, leave it in the comments. But I'm getting really into the subject of the two frequencies. And what are they? Well, what have I been talking about? What have I been saying in this video just now, just a couple minutes ago? The angelic is a higher form of self, which is also goes in, taps into telepathy and being telepathic. Many people believe that's like some kind of demonic thing, but I don't believe so. I don't take that into account at all. I'm more of a free thinker, so. And then the lower stuff, obviously, yes, Saturn frequency, and look it up on YouTube and just listen to the sound of Saturn. I think they even have some type of thing where you can fall asleep to the sounds of Saturn, but I mean, if that's what you're into, even things like DMT as well, but the sounds of DMT, the opening your third eye, but I sort of see that's sort of the similar thing, but the higher and the lower is the bad, obviously. I can represent it by the symbolism in Lord of the Rings and other things as well. And get this, I can tell you something else that's like an insider as well. Yes, I can say my smoking is like living on Saturn frequency. This is no good for me. I want to eventually stop. Get out. But the Azazel, the fallen angel, you could say the Satanah, I was talking about the vine tree and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It doesn't say in Baruch, if you read the book of Baruch, which also goes into Enoch and everything, but it wasn't, I don't think it was put into Enoch or whatever amount of, I don't think it was. But it talks about how these fallen angels went and planted the plants in the Garden of Eden. And I do believe they carried Saturn frequency with them because they fell. And when they fell, it was like they were in the angelic, meaning they were in the heavens. They fell to the lower self, from the higher to the lower, and they collected all their Saturn frequency and they encoded specifically into these plants that were destroyed and cut down because there was an angel that took an axe and cut down all these big trees and these little ones before a flood came. And then the three branches of the tree were left, and it was represented as Noah and his two sons to escape and get on the ark before the earth was flooded. And also, I do believe, because it was talking about the fig leaves and everything, that Adam and Eve were covering themselves before the Holy One, God, Creator, whatever, saw them. I do believe, it doesn't specifically say all this, obviously, in the Bible, but regardless if you read the NIV, a KJV, or whatever, it doesn't talk about Saturn frequency or any of this, that it's like I felt like I have received a download of this that I do believe, so I have a hunch of this that I do believe they encoded that Saturn frequency within the vine in the tree of knowledge of good and evil and the fig leaves when they were covering themselves. That was just my own physical download, what I had received, but I do believe there is something to this more than we can even understand. Obviously, we're not going to know everything, but I just believe this. And then it goes into, I think it goes into some mountain range. I have to go back and look it up about Noah planting the tree again, but God sent his other angel or something to plant it for the good and betterment of humanity, rather than a fallen angel coming down and them planting their own trees with their own encoded frequency. And also, if you think about it and look, the spirit that entered into the Canaan bloodline to Cain, I believe was the same spirit that had that encoded Saturn frequency that was put into the tree of knowledge of good and evil, into the vine tree, and in the fig leaves, into that spirit. So it made a spiritual runoff to create all these other hybrid bloodlines, fall in tune with the blue bloodline, the Canaan bloodline, as well as a spiritual runoff. And then the same amount of time I hear the History Channel talking about, was our bloodlines tweaked in our genome? Well, yes, it was tweaked by possibly, I do believe, generational curses and Saturn frequency, most of all, as well, going into all this, and goes into blood mutations. And also, I can tell you, if you are a Resident Evil fan, the symbolism they put in these movies are by no accident, that I do believe the T-virus and all the other viruses were represented by these different colors, such as even in witchcraft and everything else, because they're represented by hybrid bloodlines as well. And so if you do believe in the language of symbology, even how they used to put it throughout all cultures throughout the world, the Mayan culture, the Aztecs, the Olmecs, so on and so forth, and aristocratic bloodlines, hybrid aristocratic bloodlines, royal bloodlines, their symbology. I think I even saw it in Germany, where the symbology of this king was taking kids and eating these kids. And a lot of people look at that, they don't think of anything of it, but the symbology, they used that language back then for more of a reason, but now our subconscious doesn't pick up on this stuff because we don't think it's a language, or we just don't care much for it. But I can tell you it's real, and it's a real language. It's just dying out. Most of it's dead, or it's dying out, or it is dead, most of it, but I'll say it is the dead language, because most people don't understand it, don't really care about it, don't acknowledge it, or they do acknowledge it, they just don't think much of it, or they don't know anything about it, or they wouldn't know how to understand it, because yes, even in music, movies, and entertainment, it's the same thing. Our subconscious, it kills away, and guess what? This is all programmed into our, this is all pre-planned, this is all supposed to be like this, so they could dumb us down through all the years of each generation to hybridize us even more, our ways of thinking, to dumb down our ways of thinking, so on and so forth, so nothing would penetrate our psyche, our subconscious, past our conscious, but into the subconscious, which is like that log box in the back of your brain, past almost like, I kind of picture the center of our minds like an ocean, and has like this spiritual veil over it. And so nothing can pierce our subconscious. By the time it gets to it, hits the wall, and it's like you can't get past your own veil, which is the spiritual veil, to understand or receive it, perceive it, receive it, or anything. So it is dead. So we can't pick up on any of this stuff. So the symbology is the dead language, dying, dead language, however you want to put it. A lot of people I've talked to people don't believe any of this, but I do believe it. I do believe it 100%. I've been receiving downloads since I was young. I've died twice. And it's not even just that. I just do believe there's something more to this. And as far as the History Channel with the ancient aliens go, was our bloodlines and everything tweaked? Yes, by all that we're saying about the generational curses, the encoded Saturn frequency, went back to the Sentinel, fallen angel, vine, the tree of knowledge, good and evil, the vine tree, which is actually not just a vine; it was the whole tree. They had something mentioned in Baruch, it was the whole tree, and God was condemning the vine because Satsanal, the fallen angel, had planted it. And it also goes into about this trunk which was open, and I think all these angels and these other hybrid things came out of them, or fairies. I kind of picture for some reason it's fairies or something coming out. And these things were created by this black goo, graphene, ferrofluid, dark matter with the same frequency of Saturn hybrids. And also I do believe, as far as the symbology of Star Trek, Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, Prometheus, all this stuff, they took technology to their own planets. And all these kingdoms, when it was a war, as far as this other guy watching Timothy Alberta talks about it was a galactic war. I do believe this as well, because they took technology. Even when they traded the technology for women with human beings, and Azazel, the fallen angel, was teaching humans about these different principles, practices, teaching the sigils, the alchemical table, scientific PR table, how to really went into a scientific religion about, it doesn't say in Enoch about cloning, but I believe that angel taught about cloning with this black goo. And it was a galactic war, going back to what I was saying with Timothy Alberto about fighting, it talks about, heard this, I don't know if it was in the Bible, about the heavenly realms, and everything was blood bought and everything, that there was a war going on. And you talk about like the aliens and everything, and all these spacecrafts, or even in these old paintings and everything, that these different realms, and I believe it's like a hybrid realm of these different hybrids fighting out who can take over our planet fast enough, and other things as well. But I've also heard Tim Alberino talk about that as well. Arms race, hybrid war, who can take over the planet faster, basically. And yes, going back to the Canaan bloodline, I do believe it formed the 13 bloodlines as well. And I actually had another channel where I was getting deep into the stuff about talking about the Saturn frequency, the black goo, everything. A lot of the stuff is not going to make sense because we just buy into it. And this is how it can't penetrate our subconscious, because we buy into it as it's just entertainment. But we forgot that symbology is the secret matrix language that just has to be uncoded, encoded. It's a blueprint. It's just symbology. We just look at it. It's showing you rather than telling you, like writing a book. I'll show you rather than tell you. It's the same thing. And I wrote on my other book, I posted some previous videos about the singular one, how this person in my book was created by these fallen angels and angels, and how this person, this half hybrid, half human being person, led by God, basically, created by fallen angels and angels, half human, half hybrid, had the choice to either return all this new age stuff that was used for the selfish reasons, for humanity's purpose, for selfish reasons, back to the heavenly realms, or basically get vanquished and thrown into a bad place and just really get destroyed in the end. I'm not even going to say thrown into a bad place, but he was going to be destroyed in the end. The whole Derek Helix thing, which is really basically, I kind of call myself that as well. I just took the name from the character, but he would be annihilated. He was going to be taken out, but really he had the choice. Like, he was dealing with human problems while trying to deal with his higher self was lower and higher. He was in a battle between the higher and the lower self. And these entities that were kind of fighting over him to basically take him out, basically. A lot of things he didn't understand, but his job mission was to return everything that was stolen from the heavenly angelic realm, which is also the telepathic realm, which is the angelic heavens, so on and so forth. But you kind of get where I'm coming from with that, seeing like, I have certain beliefs about this stuff that I didn't understand. I was only showing this to like, well, how could rocks and trees talk like humans, walk like humans, be human-like? Everything you see in these movies. The alchemical table, periodic table, sigil symbols, which is like fallen angel symbols. Creation of this black goo, which I do believe is Anunnakian, like blood or DNA or something. Cloning, creating people and other hybrids as well. Stolen technology to take to their own planets, just like you see in these movies. Planet of the Apes, Star Wars, Star Trek, Prometheus, so on and so forth. That the bloodlines, going back to ancient aliens, they were tweaked through generational curses to create these blood mutations, to create different blood types. Spiritual runoff in the blue bloodline, mainly copper. And see, the dominant bloodline, I want to get into this, that the reason you've probably heard what they call conspiracy about negative RH blood types being bad. It's not the recessive blood types that are bad, the recessive antigen that is bad. But it's the dominant negative RH antigen that is bad, because it's always trying to dominate rather than being recessive and back off a little bit, be more kind or gentle, be more recessive in a way. And such as the mother who gives birth to her children, one's positive, one's negative, recessive and dominant. And the recessive positive, if it gives birth to a positive negative RH versus a negative RH dominant, the dominant will try to spit out or try to get rid of the positive. That's why these antibodies are given out or sent out to create other, like as a blood mutation, to create other blood types. The why, and then I've also heard doing research that the guy I follow on YouTube, Robert Cypher, was it really just the human bloodline, almost like the red bloodline? You think of Abel's bloodline trying to get rid of the Canaan bloodline, as in the non-human race, the cursed bloodline race of these hybrid entities. It just makes you wonder and think, right? How did all this stuff, and and also, if we all came from Africa lineages, why can't all blood types transfuse together at the same, like why can't they all go together and transfuse together? But instead, only certain blood types transfuse and go together with only certain blood types. Certain blood types only go together with certain blood types. Or else if we came from the same lineage, they would all be able to transfuse and go together, but they cannot. Such as a quote from late great Robert Cypher, YouTube, the Atlantean Guardians, and everything else he teaches as well. So you can find him on YouTube. I do believe, I'll say this, the negative RH antigen, the RH negative dominant antigen. You think of the whole archaic society of the Aryan races, which you think of Hitler and the eugenics thing about the blonde hair, blue eyes. What do you see throughout all these different cultures, especially with RH negative dominant antigen as blonde hair, blue eyes? And you think like, wow, I wonder if this is a certain sect of the human genome that was actually specifically tweaked, almost like you think, okay, hybrid bloodlines. What if there is a spiritual aspect to this, that these people are not fully humans, but there is a hybrid spiritual side to these people or beings, that they're half human, half hybrid, and they are pure-blooded. They are pure blood, 100% hybrid humans. They're not just mixed blood types and just... You remember in Harry Potter where the whole obsession, especially in the first one, Malfoy was obsessing about the pure bloods, and if anyone was a half blood or a mug blood as he called them, they would laugh at them and mock them. But yet we don't believe in symbology, right? We don't believe that there are some truths about this stuff, but yet science thinks it's so up to date, but it's not. It's not. I don't believe it. That there's just so much we don't know, and yet I even found research about they're still uncovering new blood types in other parts of the world. I think such as Ecuador, Peru, and other things. Like, you have to wonder how much do we just don't know that has actually happened, and we try to overcomplicate it as a human species, a human race, when things could be as so simple as the encoded Saturn frequency, the tweaked bloodlines, basically the cursed bloodline, and we're talking about the dominant Rh negative antigen. And now I feel like for some reason now they have tried to make bad things good, good, bad, and it's just like maybe the bad things they're trying to make you think they're good are a part of this lineage of hybrid beings, blonde hair, blue eyes, or even mixed blood types, hybrid bloodlines, to going back to the Atlanteans. See, and that's the whole thing about the Aryan thing goes back to the culture and the kingdom of Atlantis, and such as the Archons and Vrills as well. And so, you've even made movies about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And I was reading something about a guy named Donald Marshall. I didn't know anything about him until a couple of weeks ago. That apparently he said he was claiming he was a clone from these clone facilities. And he was talking about all this stuff as well, claiming that these blonde-haired, blue-eyed beings were from the old kingdom of Atlantis. And so it just makes me wonder about all these things. Frequencies we're talking about, that the higher and the lower self, such as the Saturn, such as O-ring, such as all this stuff. The negative Rh dominant antigen, you can see it as the Saturn frequency, if you can visualize it, that. And then the recessive positive Rh, the Rh positive recessive antigen gene can be seen as the higher self, the angelic telepathic realm. And guess what? These fallen angels, and especially Azazel, does not operate on telepathy. They don't believe in it. They don't fool with it. Why? Because they're operating on a different frequency, Saturn frequency, versus everything that's telepathic and angelic, which is the higher self, the Rh positive recessive gene, the higher telepathic self, the angelic, the divinity, the divine self. The recessive versus the dominant. The dominant, lower, and see, you think of dominant as something higher, which you can view it like that, but you know, who would ever view it as being Saturn or the lower self? No one would. People wouldn't view that with it's higher. Well, is it? We don't think like that. We don't think that, wow, we did not realize that was the lower self versus the positive recessive was actually the higher self. No one thinks like that. Humans are finite. We don't think like that. We don't. It's almost like our ways of thinking, really, if you think about it in reality, is like backwards compared to everything that is outside of this realm. If you think about it. And therefore, I guess it goes back to the whole free thinking thing versus being programmed, because if you think about it in a way, especially with narcissism or whatever, it's really just programming. You're just programmed to believe certain beliefs, ideologies, ways of thinking, but you're just really operating on a lower self, a lower identity, an identity that's not even your identity, is not you. It's the Canaan bloodline identity, Rh negative, dominant antigen. And so therefore, I think, such as my friend here, my True of Life friend, will be closing this out. And I would just give you and close this video with a final message. What's that? What frequency are you operating on today? Is it the higher self, the lower self? What can you do better to operate on the higher self, the higher Rh positive antigen recessive gene versus the Rh negative dominant gene, the lower self Saturn frequency? Which one are you operating on? Frequency you operating on? What can you do better to operate on a higher self, a higher frequency, angelic frequency, divinity, telepathic frequency that you didn't know you had or could operate on, but you can. Receive it, take it in, marinate in it, pour it over you. Such as the water. I tend to think water is like the higher self. Smart water, smart frequency. Clear. See, like water's the higher self, as in see-through. There's nothing corrupt about it. Like when you get down lower, the water just gets dirty, it seems. Because Saturn frequency, you think of it as something black, almost as like the black goo, graphene, ferrofluid, dark matter. And so with that being said, I'm closing this out. Operate on your higher self, because only very few in between, or very few of us, I do believe, will reach this. But as far as most go, will they reach it, or maybe not? You can leave in the comments, tell me what you think about all this, everything I've mentioned, the Archons, bloodlines, the frequencies, the light and the dark, so on and so forth. Fire and ice, alchemically rising.